This is gonna be a wild ride. Strap in. Hello fellow book nerds, it's Gabby, and today we're gonna be doing my February wrap up and talk about all the ways in which I failed. So as you might have seen my video for the February TBR, I am following Rachael's Realm TBR. So Rachael creates an awesome TBR with this really creative game each month, and she kind of gets prompts and then chooses a book accordingly. And I did the same. I took the prompts and I took my own books. I'm gonna link in the video so you can kind of read and see where we at. But there were 8 books there that I was supposed to read, and I have failed and only read 4 of them. But the thing is, I read 12 books in February. So you might ask, how come you didn't finish the books that you said you would read? Mood reading. And also audiobooks. They weren't available, so I just took the ones that were, and then I read like half of my books in that way. So let's firstly go through Rachael Marie's TBR and see how I did there, and then we can move on to books that I read that were on a TBR. So first off, I was supposed to read Love Enry, and I even bought the book. It is just as gorgeous as I have anticipated it to be, and then it just came a bit late and I didn't manage to read it, so there's that. I did go on a holiday this month, so that was a big part of why I didn't manage to read a lot of books. Next up is actually a success, so it was a short read, and for this I've chosen The Test by Sylvian Nouvelle. This book is a very intriguing read. It's a very short audiobook. I think it was maybe 3 hours, and it tells a story of future in England where a man is taking a citizenship to become an English citizen, and the test doesn't really go as planned, which might be our future. I absolutely loved this book. I've gave this 5 out of 5. It was so amazingly haunting and daunting. The way it was written, it was just so intense. I was at work while listening to it and I was just kind of disturbed. It was so intense. The richness of characters, even though you barely even had time to meet them, was amazing and so crisp. It really pulls you in. The story is really engaging. At first it was kind of different than I thought it was, and then it turned out to be different than what I thought that it was. It was just a wild ride, but really haunting, especially the ending. Really makes you think, and I would highly recommend it. I don't want to spoil it because it's so short, but if you can get it on audiobook, it was amazing. The performance was just so good. Next up, I also succeeded, and that was a person of color author. For this I have chosen The Best We Could Do by TBR. So this is a memoir in form of a graphic novel, which I thought was really unique. I got it from my library. It was another 5-star read. Honestly, it was amazing. I learned so much about history of Vietnam and about the experience of people, because the main character, when she was young, her family had to escape Vietnam and move to America, I think. Tells the story of that, but also tells the story of her parents and her grandparents, and kind of recounting that, and just kind of, it's a very generational story, but it's so beautiful. The art style is just gorgeous, beautiful and haunting and educational. So I would really recommend it if you get a chance to read it, and maybe you want to read some more non-fiction, but you're not really into like a traditional non-fiction. This is definitely for you. And next up was a Kindle read, which I failed because I was supposed to read one of the ARCs that I got. And next up, talking about book nerd's choice, I have read Nothing Happened by Molly Booth, and this was for Ask a Friend prompt. So this book was recommended to me on Twitter by some of you lovely people. I read it for the Book Nerd's Choice, which is a series I'm doing when I'm reading Twitter recommendations and vlogging it, and it should be going up soon, so I'm gonna link it up. This book follows the story of B, whose family owns a summer camp, and every year she goes to the summer camp and is a counselor, and it's been a big part of her life. She's now about to go off to college, so she's in a big transitional period in her life. There's also another character named Ben. He's been coming to the camp for years as well, and now he's in college, and he actually decided to come back after saying he wouldn't. Him and B have some history, and they both said nothing happened, so we don't know what happened, but something definitely did. I did enjoy the story. I gave it 3 out of 5, but I did think that the story was quite juvenile. It is young adult, but it feels like the lower, younger spectrum of young adult, and although the characters are about 17-18, they are quite juvenile and in their behavior, So I feel like I would have enjoyed this book much more if I was younger, maybe 16 years old. Next up, for an intimidating read, another failure. I was supposed to read Dracula, I didn't. And then I was supposed to read something outside of my comfort zone, and for this I have chosen Sandman by Neil Gaiman, which is a graphic novel. It's kind of connected to the DC universe and it follows the story of basically God of Sleep. I don't know, but if I'm being honest, I'm not really enjoying it. Don't want to finish it. I'm supposed to know DNF this month, but... And lastly, we have A Trope I Hate, for which I have chosen Full Disclosure by Cameron Garrett. The reason I've chosen this book was because I didn't really know what to choose, and this one talked about blackmail being one of the main plot points. This follows a story of a teenage girl who's just navigating life with HIV, and she doesn't want anyone knowing because it has negatively impacted her in the past, and she's being blackmailed. Someone is threatening to expose her. I actually very enjoyed it. I gave it 3 out of 5. Although I'm not in big contemporary mood and I keep saying it, but this was actually a really good read. I thought that the conflict was really maturely resolved, and there was a lot of points when I was surprised because people were quite mature and they were communicating well, which was really good. It did still ended up having a trope I disliked. This idea that when a girl gets a boyfriend, she abandons her friends. Still enjoyed it. I thought that it handled a very difficult topic very tastefully, and it was a powerful read. So that's it for Rachel's Realm. I know I've mostly failed, but I decided I'm definitely doing this again, and I'm gonna commit just to reading these. This month I have had a lot of other things to do, so probably not the best month in hindsight. So we'll try this sometime again, but again, thank you to Rachel for letting me do this and for encouraging everyone to get involved in the community. I just think she's lovely, and I really would recommend that you check out her channel because she's so creative, and she's having bookie trials very soon, which I'm going to be a part of, and I'm going to nail this time. I'm going to be really good. I'm going to make a TBR, I'm going to stick to it, it's going to be great. So now let's move on to some other books that I read this month. First up, I finally finished Harry Potter and Order of the Things. It's been taking me like 2 months, but I actually really enjoyed it. I always used to say this is my least favorite book of the series, and maybe it's still true, but I actually did really enjoy it much more. And I think the reason I never really liked it is because how angsty it was, and how I remember being super angsty and just so mad all the time. But actually I think that was more to do with the movie, because Harry wasn't that angsty in the book, a little bit, but I think it's very justified. And then the movie, it was a lot more of anger and stuff, and I think he does have a reason to be angry, and I think it's very justified. And another thought I had while reading this is that the reason I love Sirius so much is definitely the movie, because he is so immature and he is so just looking for trouble, and he's such a troublemaker. I still love him, don't get me wrong, I really love him, and I was so sad when... I feel like most of my love for him is from the movies because the actor is quite likable, and they don't show more of his a bit toxic traits, like pushing Harry into being more disobedient, kind of encouraging that, and maybe not having the safest option in mind. I know he has his best interest in mind, but maybe it's not the safest option. The whole Cho Chang thing is weird. He's so in love and then he just isn't. I don't know. He's just such a helpless boy. I didn't realize this, but he's just so helplessly helpless. He's just so not in touch with his emotions. Oh, ow, ow! I actually ended up giving it 5 out of 5. Then I finished probably one of my favorite books of the month, which was Beauty Queens by Libba Bray. Another 5-star read. It's kind of like an absurd comedy, and it follows the story of a plane full of beauty queens who are on their way to a pageant, and the plane crashes and they're marooned on abandoned island. This book I read as an audiobook, which was just amazing because Libba Bray was the one narrating it, and she's so talented, and the audiobook was just so funny, so many voices, there's so many effects, they just play music, they have little commercials in, because it's kind of like a futuristic world where it's big corporations taking over. They literally had like commercial inserts. It was amazing. The performance was outstanding, breathtaking. I loved it so much. Very good. And it just has this very absurd air about it. I don't know how to explain it, but it's just everything that happens is so ridiculous. Turned up to 11. Just so ridiculous, but it works. It just really works. It's funny. It's bantery. If you're into that kind of thing. If you're not into absurd, then don't bother, because you're gonna be like, this makes no sense, this is so stupid, this is so cliche. But if you embrace it, it's amazing. It's surprising how much diversity there is. All kinds of different representations in terms of sexuality, gender identity, disabilities. Discusses such important topics as well. Discusses racism, sexism, beauty standards, transphobia. I was not expecting to love it as much as I did. Then I have read Doll Bones by Holly Black. I listened to this as an audiobook. It's a middle grade and it tells the story of a little boy and his friends who find a haunted doll and they have to go onto an adventure to return the doll to its grave. I thought it was really interesting, eerie, but nothing special. Then I finished Educated by Tara Westover. So Educated is a non-fiction memoir written by Tara Westover, who has grown up in a very reclusive Mormon community, and her family was a survivalist family, so they were always kind of preparing for the doom, and very, very religious Mormon people. She was never allowed to have a normal life when she was growing up, and it's kind of her journey of discovering kind of the differences between her family and the rest of the people, discovering her own value system. I found the book interesting. I thought it was quite well written. By that being said, it was very long. It wasn't very long, but it felt quite long. There was a lot of repetitions, just a lot of normal day-to-day, which was interesting, but a bit tedious to get through. I understand that it's different because non-fiction is someone's life, right? I can't be like, oh, it's boring. I did find myself kind of drifting away at times, and the violence was so explicit. I'm not squeamish, but if you experience something like it, or maybe if you're not okay listening to very, very violent, very explicit violence descriptions, probably not for you, or just be careful, be aware of it. There is some very explicit violence multiple times. But yeah, I gave it 3 out of 5. Then I read The Last Time I Lied by Riley Sager. This was the story of a woman who in her youth went to a summer camp, and one night 3 of her housemates, 3 of her friends disappeared without a trace, and it's always had quite a big impact on her. And she gets approached by the person who was in charge of the camp many years later and asks if she would like to come back to the camp because they want to reopen it, and she feels like this could give her closure and help her understand what happened all of those years ago. It's a thriller, quite a popular one on BookTube. I've never really read anything from this author before. Now, this book bored me to death. There was not much happening. It was a lot of the main character just reminiscing. The action really only happens maybe in the last 100 pages of the book. It was not worth me getting through the previous pages. I was just not having a great time. Honestly, I was really bored. I thought the characters were not fleshed out great. Final twists were very mediocre, and the final kind of showdown, whatever you want to call it, also wasn't very impressed, and I gave it 2.5 out of 5 because I guess I must have found something interesting in it. But yeah, it's more of a 2-star read than this one. But if you really liked it, let me know, because I feel like everyone did like it and I'm just missing out. Then I finished the audiobook for Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. So this follows the story of a teenage girl who has some severe anxiety and OCD, and she has thought spirals. It's kind of like a weird detective story because she has a friend whose dad went missing and there's a reward for finding him because he's a criminal. Then she and her friend kind of try to uncover what happened, but it's really more about this girl dealing with her anxiety and OCD and the fact that she has to live with it and how to navigate it, and just getting into relationships and how that could work. It does have quite detailed descriptions of where she is in her mind, as in like when she starts spiraling and catastrophic thinking, and it is really claustrophobic. You can really feel how scary and how disturbing it must be, how she can't get out of. She knows it's ridiculous what she's thinking, but she just keeps going at it. And I think if you also experience that kind of thing, or you have anxiety, I think be careful with this, because I feel like it could maybe trigger some stuff. But it was quite educational in that way. I've never experienced a main character like this. I thought the story was quite well written. As always, John Green's a good addicting writer. The audiobook was well performed, and all in all I did enjoy it, although it didn't take my breath away and become my favorite, and I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. Then I listened to a very quick read, which was Reptile Room by Lemony Snicket, which is the second book in the Unfortunate Series of Events series, which follows 3 siblings whose parents die in a very tragic fire, and they have to live with their relatives, and they encounter Count Olaf, who is one of the relatives, and he's not a great man, and they have to kind of outsmart him and run away from him so he can get his hands on their fortune. I read the first book in the series a while back in the summer, and now I decided the audiobook was again available on Libby, so I decided to listen to this one, and the audiobook was pretty well performed. At first I was a bit like, everyone sounds the same. I felt like the narrator wasn't making much effort, but then I got into the story more and it actually was pretty fun, and he started making some more distinct voices for the characters. And this series is very bizarre. It's kind of catastrophical, as in like the narrator is always like, well, you should move away, this story is too tragic, this story is very sad, very sad. The books are very whimsical though, and very fun written, very, very quick reads. So if you really like middle grade or something bit different, I would highly recommend it. And lastly, I finished literally this morning, which was like an hour ago, I finished The Other People by CJ Tudor. So this is the February pick for the Literary Dead book club hosted by lovely Books and Lala, and I wanted to participate. I have read CJ Tudor's previous book, The Chalkman, which I did not like. I gave it like 2 stars. I was really underwhelmed, so I had quite low expectations for this one. I have to return it in like half an hour to the library, so I like read through this. This is a very quick read and it's written in a very accessible way, so it's easy to read, and I must say I was pleasantly surprised. I like this book more than I like The Chalkman. It's still not a favorite of mine because I thought there's a lot of threads that were just kind of touched upon but not really, and then there is this whole kind of supernatural element to it that I was not expecting. That was a very, very minor part and it was not really explained, which I know was like, oh, at the point, but I think if you put something like that in your book, you maybe should try to make a little bit of effort. But this follows the story of Gabe, who's driving home one night and he is very sure that he sees his daughter in a very strange car on the motorway just behind him, and he starts following the car and he tells himself it can't be his daughter. But then when he calls in home, the police answer and tell him that his wife and daughter have both been found dead in his house. He can't accept that his little girl is dead because he saw her driving away in that strange car. The story of this desperate father trying to really find his daughter and find out what's happening. There's quite a lot of perspective here, like 3 or 4 different characters whose perspective we see, and there's like another thread going through. It was quite an enjoyable read. It was very quick for a thriller. It was pretty good. I did get invested in the mystery, and I was a bit maybe underwhelmed by the ending. I don't really know. I guess I wasn't expecting the paranormal element at all, which really surprised me that it was there. So I was expecting answers. We basically don't get any answers whatsoever. So as long as you're prepared for that, I think you could enjoy it. I'm thinking about giving this 3 stars. Yeah, I think 3 stars is fair. Okay guys, that's it for my February wrap up. I have read quite a lot of books. I failed Rachel's Realm, but we are gonna do it again and we're not gonna fail. And we're also gonna do the bookish trial and we're not gonna fail. I'm gonna post my TBR a bit closer because I don't know what I'm gonna be reading a month from now. I can't plan that much. But let me know, have you read any of these books? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree? What was your favorite read of the month? For me, I think despite everything, Beauty Queens might be my favorite book of the month. It's one I keep thinking about and I keep being amused by it. What did you read and what was your favorite one? Let me know in the comments, but for now, thank you so much for watching. I am looking forward to seeing you soon. I hope you enjoyed it. Bye!